You've got to find your own bliss. You have to follow your own Joseph Campbell idea to your own bliss, and you have to become the hero of your own journey.
Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Aniston, and this is Empowered Life. Today we are joined by Gary Ramsey. When Gary's near-fatal cancer struck in the summer of 2015, there were few options available to him. His entire reality was uprooted and tossed into yet another more perplexing and mystifying one. Due to his firm resilience and his ability to show his heart and follow his heart, he slowly emerged from the grim situation into a world far greater than one he could have previously known. Today, he now stands firm in the belief that within our own self lies the wisdom with which we shall achieve our greatest glory here on earth. Gary, I am so excited to have you here.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited to be here, Rudi. Thank you.
Gary, I want to start off. You're an author, okay?
Yes.
You're an opera singer. You're an actor. You're an acting teacher. You're an acting coach. You've worked with clients like Ethan Hawke, Jerry Seinfeld, Tom Skerritt, Colin Quinn. And I mean, this is just to name a few. I can keep reading the list, but we only have 30 minutes and I really want to get to some of the questions. So you have such a fascinating story. And from our vantage point today, I say fascinating. I'm sure it wasn't throughout the entire process, but I'm really curious if we could start before the summer of 2015. Tell us a little bit about your life up until that point. Who is Gary Ramsey?
Well, just as you had just mentioned, I had a great career. I was not only working with high-profile people in the business, I was teaching, I was also opera singing. I had become extremely successful in a very short time, which was also kind of an amazing adventure that had happened to me later in life because of my vocal work and my vocal background. And I was doing great. I had just had a hit opera we had done in New York. I was going to be remounting that in Houston, Texas. Life was really going well. And then all of a sudden, one day, I started experiencing problems. It escalated very, very rapidly. And then I walked into my doctor's office after taking tests and looking at things, and he said, I have to tell you, you can die at any minute. And I went, what? And I had never in my life heard a diagnosis like that. And I really had at first thought he was joking. And I said, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he said, you can die at any minute. And I said, well, how is that even possible? And he said, well, first of all, you have cancer. And I said, okay, but how can that kill you? He said, it won't. He said, you have a deadly tumor coming from your cancer that's going into a very deadly place up to your heart. He said, it threatens, it could literally just, the tiniest flake of it could come off and kill you within 10 minutes. And I was in shock because I didn't even know such a thing could really happen to anyone. And then I said to him, I said, well, what can we do? And he said, well, that's the real problem. I was like, wait a minute, you mean that's the problem? So you mean I could die at any minute and everything is, I have cancer, but the real problem is, he said, yeah. He said, there's very little we can do. Anything we probably try to do will be detrimental. You will die immediately. He said, so my advice would be to get your affairs in order. He said, you've got to move as fast as possible. He said, because I have to be honest, he said, you could be dead within the next 2 hours. He said, I don't even know what to say to you. So that shocked me into a kind of surreal, I will only call it surreal reality. I couldn't really believe things were happening as they unfolded. I remember asking him, I said, well, could I have all my test results? And he was like, oh yeah, sure. He said, I don't know what you're going to do with them, but, and if you need, anything else, just call the office. So I walked out of that office and I really felt like I'd been hit by a bus. And it was like my whole world had just stopped. And I was walking toward a rather beautiful little park right by the office. And as I got there, I can only describe that I hit this state of bliss. Because all of a sudden I became so blissed out and so, I just wanted to say, in a state of serenity, great, great serenity and peace is the best way I can really describe it. And it was one of those beautiful days. It was late in August. The wind was blowing through the trees. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cool. It was just perfect. And I saw all these people with their children. It was a park, little kids playing and parents. And it hit me that anyone, anywhere could die at any minute, which sounds like a relatively simplistic thing, but at the moment it was profound. And I thought, oh my God, but I have this information that says I can die for real at any minute, yet everybody here could die at any minute. And I got to tell you, Rudi, that was it. I went into this state. I had to sit down. I don't know how long I was there. And all of a sudden, these thoughts came to me of a woman called Anita Moorjani. She is the author of a book called Dying to Be Me.
Love
and
it.
I had been a fan of Anita's books for at that point, probably close to 3 years. I'd bought one of the first copies of her book because I had seen a famous interview of hers with Wayne Dyer when she became, before she was, an author or anything, about her story. And for people who don't know, she was a woman who was on her deathbed. She was on her deathbed. Her organs were failing from stage 4 cancer. She only had about 45 minutes to live, and she had a near-death experience, and she came back into her body and healed her body while she was in a major cancer hospital in Hong Kong. So I had known about Anita's work for years. I had read the book many times. I had recommended it many times. And Anita came to me in that park, and it was like, Anita, of course. If she could come back from death, well, I mean, I'm doing better than that. I'm walking around. I feel good. I was like,
sitting in a park.
I'm in a park. I mean, maybe I can get a miracle. And I have to say that's what got me out of my bliss state. That was what woke me up in that park. And I got up and I felt so free and so alive and so happy about everything that had already happened. Here I was going to die at any minute, which sounds really ridiculous, but it was the truth. And then I proceeded to be on this high, this feeling of like nothing could overtake me. And then I started to make phone calls and I started to, go home. And then I remembered, though, the name of Farrah Fawcett popped into my head. And I remembered how Farrah had been flown to Germany before she had passed away. And at the time, a friend of mine told me that they flew her there because Germany has top cancer treatments. So immediately in my mind, I thought, wow, why don't I investigate Germany? Still on this unbelievable high. I go upstairs, I get on the computer. This is just a couple of hours from my diagnosis. I'm looking in Germany for this, these places. And all of a sudden a pop-up comes up about this place in Mexico. And the name of it was Sonaviv. And I looked at this and it was beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful facility. And I looked at it and I clicked on it and I said, oh my God, that would be a place to die. So I literally popped onto it and I started reading about it. I didn't know anything about it. I found out later it popped up because it was modeled after one of the famous German clinics. They did handle people with cancer. So I just thought, well, let me just try it. So I get them on the phone. They have a representation here in the States. I get a person on the phone and I go, hi, you know, this is my situation. I have this deadly tumor. I said, do you even handle anything like that? She said, oh my gosh, yes. As a matter of fact, we specialize in your kinds of tumor. And I said, what? I said, they're telling me it's very rare. She said, yes, it is rare. She said, but because they don't really deal with these tumors in the States and most people die, she said, we have therapies that we try and then we try to stabilize the person for surgery so that it will not rupture or fracture. And honestly, I thought I was on the Twilight Zone. I thought it was like, this is the most unbelievable thing I have ever been through in my life. And then to make that even like also more staggering is that she then said to me, by the way, do you have your actual diagnosis and your tests and your reports? Because if you have those, we can do this much faster because you don't have any time to waste. And I had asked the doctor for them before I left. So I had everything right there that day. And I have to tell you, that's when I realized I was on a journey that was going to be miraculous. And I really, even in my book, I called it Bliss, One Hero's Journey. I felt like I was on, Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey and how we all go on this unbelievable journey to then come back to exactly where we started. And that is exactly what happened to me.
Unbelievable.
It was truly unbelievable. Truly unbelievable.
You know, I make notes as I listen because I'm learning as much as the listener's learning throughout all of these incredible processes of listening to speakers, you know, handle different levels of adversity. And why I was so excited to connect with you was your ability to stay so positive in the face of adversity within such a short amount of time. You know, I have spent the last, at least I want to say 10 years working on myself from an inward perspective. And so I have a very strong morning routine and I meditate a lot and I do breathing exercises. And I've done all this work so that when I'm faced with any level of heightened emotion, be in business, client, doesn't matter, situation, flat tire, traffic ticket, doesn't matter. I immediately am able to, in a moment, quiet and calm and center myself. And I used to have a very heightened emotional state. I'd be either really happy or really, you know, peed off. And so I'd tether between the two. I can't even begin to imagine what it would be like to sit in a doctor's office and to be told, you know, you could die in the next 2 hours. And then to walk out in that situation, I don't think there's any amount of training in the world that could help prepare you for that. I don't know if there's a way to center and calm yourself in that moment. And so what you experienced was something far greater than you. And you mentioned sitting there and connecting with every person sitting in the park and having this sense of it could be anyone at any moment. And I think that in moments like that, we transcend ourselves and we connect to each and every single person, living thing that was, is, will ever be. And it was the most beautiful description. I'm so grateful to have your message here today. Can you share with me in those moments from hearing this diagnosis to realizing, because I don't think it was an actual moment that you chose, it sounds more like it happened to you, but where you realized you were in a blissful state, like can you walk us through a little bit of that? Did you actively try and shift your mindset? Are you just generally a positive person? How were you able to?
Well, I will say one of the things that I do teach is the Alexander technique, which for those that don't know, it is a mind-body relationship. That most of us don't realize that we have either a very good relationship with ourselves or a very bad one, both between our mind and our body. So I will say that I had been doing that work for already 15 years minimum, and even a little longer than that, because it's a very long training process. I would also say that I was always an explorer, which is why I already knew about Anita Moorjani's book.
Mm-hmm.
That I had always done deep work both on myself and that idea of what do we want to call it, life beyond this.
Yes.
I had also had been exposed to a lot of death. I mean, I had one of my first major deaths when I was a 7-year-old child of somebody who was very close to me, my grandmother, actually. So my life had always kind of gone in that direction of really going into the more profound, the more deep. But I agree with you. It's hard to be prepared for something that I was thrown at, particularly because I didn't really even have a background in deadly cancerous tumors, which is what I had. I didn't even really know, I'd always heard, like most people, you have cancer, they recommend treatments. At least they give you 2 weeks, 2 months, something.
Mm-hmm.
So my situation was a surprise to me in that regard, and did kind of knock me off my balance. But I have to say it was probably the culmination. In that moment, I'm going to say it was a state of grace that came upon me, where all of what I had done in my life, all that was currently going on, had kind of come together. And that, again, that state of this blissful ease was, I think the culmination, really, of all the work I had done in my life. And how do you actually literally prepare for it? I have no way to say. But I would say that when one is dedicated to the journey of what this life is about and what's beyond this life, I think a lot of us fall into that, as did Anita on her journey. She had, investigated spiritual practices and different ways of looking at things, different perspectives. And even though hers, in a sense, is even more miraculous because she was dying at the time, I think that we all come to a place where our history and our evolvement comes together in a moment of, let's say, crisis, Although Anita always teases me, she said, yeah, but I almost had to die to do it. You didn't die. I was like,
it's so funny. I was going to say the same thing to you right after you stopped.
Oh,
people hear something, and then they create what that's going to look like from there on out. Mm-hmm. It's like they give up their power. And I love Anita's book. I have followed Anita from the days of Wayne bringing her out on stage. I followed her work going to, doctors and speaking in rooms of 10 or 12 long before the book was published. I was fascinated by her ability to take that level of conscious control in this physical reality that isn't very physical. And so I've been fascinated with her. And what I find is so interesting of what Anita has jokingly shared with you is that, she really took it to the very end, and there was no time left. I mean, she literally was dying.
She had 45 minutes left. Yep.
And now I look at you, and you get this death sentence. Okay. Mm-hmm. How many people out there would hear you have, maybe you could have 2 hours, and how many people would in that moment just simply say, oh, wow, I have 2 hours. And that would be the vantage point, and that would be what they create. And it would then have a ripple effect. Maybe it's not 2 hours, but maybe it's 2 months, but those 2 months would be terrible. They'd be tough. And then everything would dwindle. Whereas in that moment, you were able to physically shift it and change. We hear of people that heal from cancer and then they get sick again because their minds are still sick. Even though the results progressed, the body then returned, and your focus was in an ability to so quickly change it. And what I love about, and I'm repeating for the benefit of the listener, is just that you found bliss so quickly. Mm-hmm. It's told you might have less than 2 hours, you might have 2 months, but anyone's going to walk away with 2 hours. That's what you're going to hear. Mm-hmm. And then you turned it into bliss. And then you went and connected all of these incredible dots, and then found this facility and were on your way. And it's all these synchronistic events. And in my opinion, it had everything to do with the fact that you were able to stay in a moment of gratitude and clarity and connected.
Absolutely. And fearlessness. I will say I really experienced, I did have bouts of fear, but they were not big ones throughout the journey. I write about those as well. But I was in a state of fearlessness, which Nita talks so much about, that when she finally realized that it was her fear that had really kept her, had gotten her where she was. And I took that message to heart when I first read that book. And that was the one thing that I knew I had to watch out for, that when fear started creeping up, I really got on top of it immediately. I did not go there. I didn't allow my mind to go there. And I could always just say to myself, well, if I'm going to die at any minute, then I'm going to die at any minute. What am I going to do? So why be afraid? Do I want to go down with the ship screaming and hysterical? Or do I want to go down with the ship like we imagine most captains, just, with real peace and real dignity and courage? And that's really what I chose. I was going to go down with my ship in a blissful, peaceful, courageous manner. And I was not going to be running around like a chicken without my head. I just refused to do it. It wasn't what my life had been about up to that point. So I found it almost, it would almost have been, disgraceful in a sense from my perspective to have allowed myself to go there. But I will tell you, I was around a lot of people who were trying to scare me the whole time. So I don't want to just, think it was easy.
No,
it wasn't. When I decided to go to Mexico, I had a lot of people who were against my decision. And they were trying very hard to stop or to block me from going. And I did, win through that. I was able to get to Mexico very quickly. I was diagnosed on a Tuesday in the late afternoon, and I was in Mexico on the following Sunday morning.
That's amazing.
I was there.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, if you don't mind, could you share a little more around your belief that within our own self lies the wisdom with which we shall achieve our greatest glory here on earth? I'd like you just to elaborate a little on that for me, please.
We really possess all the answers. I mean, this journey for me, it has all of our answers for us personally. See, and this is where I think people can become confused, because people think there's a particular way, for example, even healing or cancer, there's a particular way that it has to go. And I no longer believe in that. I don't believe in that at all. I believe each of us, just as our faces are unique, our fingerprints are unique, that our journeys are unique. And that for one to embrace their own self, where they've come from, what their energy has created and become throughout their lifetime, that's the journey that they need to take. But unfortunately, we get bombarded with other people or experts or people who are telling us what we should be doing. And what that does is that knocks somebody off of their journey, and then that actually knocks them out of their healing. So, for example, I've been a longtime fan of Edgar Cayce, prior even to Anita. And Edgar's, his writings were about the individual. And that always stuck with me, that somebody could have the same medical problem, but they weren't going to solve it in the same way. They had to go about their way, all the way to like one guy who had to be prayed. He was dying, and they had to pray with a Jewish rabbi and a Catholic priest, and a Baptist minister had to pray over his bed. And that's when I realized that, no, there is not one way for anyone. And that's what I talk to people about, both in my book and when I talk to people personally, that I would never advise someone how their healing, how their journey needs to go. I would always tell them, you've got to find your own bliss. You have to follow your own Joseph Campbell idea to your own bliss, and you have to become the hero of your own journey. And if you get knocked off of that and you lose your courage and you become fearful, you are now at the mercy of everybody, everything. And this is what I find that people happens with their cancer. They become at the mercy of those that love them, their doctors, the experts, and they then become, in a sense, victimized by the various systems that claim that they are trying to help them. And I know it many times I could have allowed it to happen to me. I had people begging me not to go to Mexico. I had people begging me to go to, you know, all these other special places here. And I said, look, they just keep telling me that I'm probably going to die. So if I'm going to die, let me go someplace beautiful and let me try something that's cutting edge, that is not done in American medicine. Let me try something different. And that's what I ended up doing. And once again, it couldn't have worked out better if I had planned it. The synchronicities continued from the day I got on that plane until the day I came back. And to be honest, even when I came back, I mean, my life has been nothing but a blessing from that day forward, really, the last 5 years.
You know, you talk about something that's so powerful, and I really want the listener to take from the story more than just the cancer story. And I understand there are going to be a lot of people that are listening to your amazing story, Gary, that will have a cancer diagnosis, or they will have a form of dis-ease. But I want to take it a step past that and connect this to every single person that is listening to what you're saying, because in essence, we're talking about having the ability to quiet the outside noise. Now that noise might be your ego, that might be fear, or that might be your mother or your husband or your wife or your partner or your friend or your doctor or whomever. And most of the people around you that were trying to prevent you from going to Mexico were lovingly trying to help you.
Absolutely.
But you connected to that inner, and we're going to talk about intuition now, but the intuition within you that was telling you this is where you need to be going. And it's the difference between feeling, does this feel expansive to me? Does this feel freeing to me? Or does this feel restrictive to me? And so I encourage the listener, spend time by yourself. If you need to make an important decision, walk away from the decision, walk away from the situation, walk away from people, spend a few moments by yourself, take a few deep breaths in, a few deep breaths out, and then ask yourself, how does this feel? And then go with the feeling response that feels good. And it sounds like, Gary, you just do this organically, not just in this situation, but in all aspects of your life. It's amazing.
Yes. And again, it's a practice that I've been working on for a long time. And then I was given the gift to try it out. I was actually given, like, I often tell people that deadly cancer was probably one of the greatest blessings of my life. Mm-hmm. Truly, it transformed everything. I would not give it up for anything. And again, there's few people that can really say that about their cancer. I know Anita can, and I know that I can. So that is really the secret. That is the secret to all of it. And remember, I did not know for certain Mexico would work. Mm-hmm. I had a better chance than I had here, but I still had to have a representative from my family, a family member who was in charge of me, so that if I did die, that they could legally take care of my body, because I was in a foreign country. So again, there was no guarantee, but whether I lived or died was irrelevant. I knew that that's where I needed to go. Live or die, that was what I needed to do. And I did it.
Well, I encourage every single listener to get a copy of your book, because it is such a fantastic, fantastic reminder that we are at all times in control of our lives, in our destiny, of where we're going. Something I've spoken about in almost every single interview that we've been doing and will continue to insert is that everything that happens to us, all adversity that we experience in our lives, are stepping stones for where we should be going. You talk about Anita Majani's message, and today she impacts hundreds of millions of people through books, lectures, YouTube videos. We have your story, incredibly successful career. You know, you're climbing. We talk about the people that you would interact with on an everyday basis. And now we think about what you're doing today and the people you're impacting today, and which one of those two was fulfilling. Which one of those two makes you feel more alive, and which one of those has more lasting effects and impacts? And so, you know, you can still continue acting and coaching, but what you're doing now and the message you're sharing and graciously spending your time with us to share this with our listener, it really is such a profound message. And I just hope everyone gets a copy of your book and benefits from it. Can you tell us a little bit about your Facebook lives that you do? I know they're quite popular, and obviously we would like to try and connect our listeners to that as well.
Yes. So on my page, Bliss, One Hero's Journey, same as the book, and it comes up with my name as well. I do lives, Facebook lives, about things that I learned on my journey, and I also apply them to the things that are going on, like right now with things in our world. And I discuss my lessons and what I learned, and then I reveal that also to the listeners. Mm-hmm. So that is my weekly gift to the world.
I love it. I love it. I just wanted to say thank you from my heart to yours for your message to everybody. And
thank you. And from my heart to yours as well.
Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate you, your time, and your very profound message.